Hi everyone, Matt Metzger here with ABI Attachments. Welcome back to another episode of ABI Dirt. Today's episode is the 5th episode in this mini-series we're taking on comparing the TR3 and the TR3E series. Today, we're taking a look at the Scarifiers. Now, for those of you who live south of the Mason-Dixon line and you need a translator, they're also called Scarifiers. But since I'm from the north, I say things a little bit funny, right? It's all right. But whether or not you call this a Scarifier or a Scarifier, what actually matters is that it gets the job done. So let's take a look at the Tier 3, the Tier 3E series, and see how you can put those Scarifiers to work. So we're back here once again with our TR3 and our TR3E series. I want to give you a close look at the Scarifiers on these two units. Here you've got the TR3 Scarifier, and here you've got the TR3E series Scarifier. You can tell we made a big difference between the two. Now, I know we've been comparing the different components on these units for the past couple of weeks, but today I actually want to take a deeper dive into the Scarifiers and why we use such an aggressive vertical agitation component on these two tools. So even though the components themselves are the exact same on these two units, how they're used on the units are a bit different, so let's take a look. We'll start with the design of the Scarifier itself. This is what we refer to as our Scarifier Complete. It is the shank and tip together. The shank is 9-inch forged steel. This is our stock size Scarifier shank. They do come in different sizes. I'll cover that in a second. And you can see that we opt for a bolt-on cast tip on the bottom. This tip is 5.5 inches long, 1 3/8 across the front face. Now, we opt for a bolt-on tip because we want to make maintenance and replaceability as easy as possible. We know these are going to wear. It is a wear part. You know that you're always replacing shovels and whatnot, that you're digging through the soil. So to save you money and not have you swap out shanks each time, we make it so you can just swap out these tips. So let's talk about longevity then, because we get this comment a lot. How long do the Scarifiers tips last? And I hate to be the one to break it to you, but you know already, it depends, right? Anytime you have got steel that is getting drugged through the soil, it's like taking sandpaper and just constantly rubbing on this thing. Eventually, it's going to wear down. It depends on how often you're using the tool and what kind of material and for what duration of time. Because as you can imagine, the longer you've got these tips engaged in the soil, the hotter it gets, more quickly it wears down on you. Now, I'll flip this over so you can see, we actually have our phone number imprinted directly into the size of the tip. One reason to make that easy on you and calling us when you need parts. The second reason for having this in, this is a really good indicator of when to replace the tips. As the tips wear down, once it wears up to the point that it gets near the phone number, time to give us a call. Let's get you a fresh set of tips. Now that you've had a chance to see the design of the Scarifier, let's take a look at the positioning on the tool. So we're taking a look here. We're starting first with our Tier 3E series this time. And as I mentioned in previous episodes, these Scarifiers fit directly into pockets that are welded to the main frame. On the E series here, they're welded to the back of this tube frame. On the TR3, they're welded to that front face of the rear angle on the rear of the frame. And the reason I want to stop and point this out is because having the Scarifiers pinned into these pockets, and obviously we've got this one pinned up out of the way, but when they are pinned into these pockets, you've got the strength and the weight of the main frame of the tool behind these Scarifiers. So rather than having the vertical agitation component on your tool being pinned into a weldment or being on some kind of like a spring or a tine system that can bounce and flex, we opted to make the Scarifiers pinned into the mainframe to give it the rigidity that you want when you want to be aggressive with your vertical decompaction. Now let's talk about the angle of engagement. It may not seem like a big deal that we've got this 30-degree angle on both the TR3E series and the TR3, but there's actually some significant science behind that. So you played around with a lot of designs that had just vertical components, just straight up and down, perpendicular to the ground, but they just scratch across the surface. If any of you have used any kind of spring-loaded components, you know there's not enough aggression there to really dig in and get real work done. That's why we've opted for this angle. So the angle of the Scarifier, matched with the weight of the frame that we just talked about, allows these Scarifiers to really dig into heavily compacted material and get some heavy work done. It allows to drop those Scarifiers down, get beneath the surface, and break up the compaction that you're trying to get rid of. You'll notice too that we've got these Scarifiers positioned behind this floating leveling blade that we've talked about in previous episodes of the ABI Dirt. And if you want a full rundown on why we've got the leveling blade up in the front of the TR3 lineup, check out the previous episode. We've got some great information there on the science behind it. But you can see that we've got this vertical decompaction after the leveling function and before the finish rake here in the rear of the tool. That way you still have the final finish accomplished, and any clods that are brought up, any big chunks of your material that are brought up to the surface, that finish rake can knock those out. We'll talk about the finish rake and flow in future episodes, but it's important to see that the muscle, the primary decompaction component of the TR3, is right here centered in the middle of the tool. We've made adjusting the depth of these Scarifiers a really simple process on the TR3 line. We've opted for a bent pin and a snap ring pin here on the back. As I mentioned before, this Scarifier is currently in a position that would keep it up out of play. If you were to use this TR3 E-Series right now, you wouldn't have any decompaction at all. But let's say I want to drop it to engage and start ripping, pop the snap ring pin, pull the bent pin out of the way, drop it down to your desired depth, bent pin back in. Now, we've got 4 different adjustment holes on these pockets that hold the Scarifiers. It gives you about an inch of additional depth per hole that you drop, and don't forget, that combines in with the depth you can gain from your wheel block adjustments that we talked about in the previous episode. So this is what allows you to really dig in and decompact to your desired depth. And lest you be concerned that you're gonna get too aggressive, remember, this is why we talked so much about these stabilizing wheels in the previous episode. If you haven't watched that yet, please go check out why a tire is not actually a tire at ABI Attachment. It's a stabilizing wheel, because that allows you to control your depth so that you will never get any deeper than what your stabilizing wheel allows. We've got 2 upgradable options for the Scarifiers. Both of them are for the TR3. One option is to swap out to go from your 9-inch Scarifier shanks to the 12-inch Scarifier shanks. I'm gonna give you a heads up, that's really aggressive. Usually we see that in our Western equine disciplines, our rodeo situations where they're looking for loose footing in their horse arenas you're looking at 6, 7, 8, 9 inches deep in those scenarios. Those are your speed events. So if you're wanting to get that deep, we do have 12-inch shanks available. That's not gonna be common in the landscape and property owner scenario. Another upgradable option that you could consider if you're looking at the TR3 is actually a hydraulically controlled Scarifier. So in that situation, we install hydraulic cylinders for you here in the shop. It's a 22-inch shank, so it can connect to a weldment up top. And that means from the seat of your tractor, you can use your auxiliary hydraulics to control the depth of the Scarifier. So if you're in a situation where you've got a TR3, you're using it hours a day, you're on different job sites, and you want to control exactly how deep you're gonna go, and you don't wanna get off your tractor to switch the depth of each one of these Scarifiers individually, that's a great option to upgrade to. The next question we get regarding the Scarifiers is how well do they work in the equine arena? There are a lot of you out there who have spent a lot of money on your horse arenas, and you wanna be really careful of that base. You're gonna be really careful to protect your investment, not only your investment in the arena, but also in your horse. These Scarifiers look aggressive. We want them to be aggressive, but that's where we pair it up with the control we give you with those stabilizing wheels. Remember, and I'll say it till I'm blue in the face, I'm so sorry, that we will give you the strength to decompact, but we also give you the control so those Scarifiers cannot dig any deeper than what that wheel will allow. These Scarifiers, also being angled forward, actually create a rolling motion of the material as it's being pulled through the arena. So if you've got different types of arena footing and you're trying to mix that footing together, whether it's the traditional type and you've got a kind of a clay, silt, sand mix, or if you have any other additives to it, the forward-facing angle allows that material to ride up the front and kind of roll and mix as you're using it. That's another reason why we prefer the Scarifier to be pinned fast to the frame itself. No spring action relieving the pressure, whether it's S-tines or spring times. We want this to be aggressive so it can churn the material, again, giving you the control of that stabilizing wheel. Let's finish up today with talking about the Scarifiers in real life. We get asked all the time, how do these Scarifiers in the TR3 compare to a power rake? We've got a lot of experience with power rakes. We've been working with you as contractors for decades. The easiest way to boil it down is that these Scarifiers will give you greater speed, greater depth, and greater durability. I say speed because that power rake controls how fast you can get your job done. You can only drive your tractor as fast as that power rake can keep up with you. But when you're using Scarifiers, which are just a mechanical component on the back of your TR3, they can move as fast as you can move your tractor. and it can give you that depth, which brings me to number 2. A typical power rake is only gonna get you inch and a half, maybe 2 inches if you squeeze out of it, of decompaction. But if you're concerned about root growth and seed germination, you know it takes more decompaction than that to get good root growth, to get good permeation of your water and disperse that water throughout your soil. Which is why we've given you the ability on these Scarifiers to get as deep as 2, 3, 4 inches with just a standard 9-inch shank. The last thing I say is durability, because there's nothing to break. Whereas on these power rakes, you've got so many components, so many moving parts, so many things that can go wrong, shut you down in the field, which means downtime, wait time, and if you've got a crew of people waiting on a fix, you know how costly that can be. Whereas if you've just got Scarifiers, there's nothing to break. Even if you wear those tips down, we always recommend you have an extra set of tips on the shelf. It's swap out a couple of grade 8 bolts, you're back up and running. That's all we've got for today, everyone. Hope you found the information beneficial and helpful. Remember, hit that subscribe button. Tell all your friends if you want more information about the TR3 and TR3E series. Keep in touch. Until next time, take care.